psychiatry.
I'll speak to you after.
Okay.
I tell you what, good afternoon, everybody. We only got one guest on tonight, so because Saturday nights is usually my what you call time off. And yesterday, I don't know what was happening yesterday. I think I booked too much in. Then there was other things too, so I'm so sorry about that. But and I couldn't let Robert Luther Smith go. No way. I like this guy. In the meantime, guys, on the radio site, make sure you when you're tuning in, press the other button, not the guest button. That's something to do with Robert's button. So you, I should join us on live. I don't want you to come into the studio live. So that's one thing. And also, thank you very much for all your likes and keep posting on our Facebook page. I'd be so grateful for that. And on the website, we're over now on about 30 or 40,000 people on that. So thank you so much for that. Robert, how are you?
I'm very well. I've survived the heat.
I know. It's really bad, isn't it? Because, where I live in the southwest of England, and, and I'm lucky, I live by the sea.
Yeah, me too.
But, it's been glorious, but it's been really isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if anybody wants to know what South America is like, that's what it's like. And if you can put up with it every day, good luck to you. That's all I can say.
I know. So how long have you lived in South? Do you used to live in South America, or do you go back?
Well, it was two things really. Is the one I just finished college, and I sort of went on a gap year, and I sort of chose to go to Brazil because I wanted to learn how to play the samba, and also at the same time, I had got into a guy called Deodato, his records, and he was the guy that produced Kool and the Gang later on. But I really got into Deodato because although I had a sort of typical classical musical upbringing, I wasn't going to be able to afford an orchestra. Although, funnily, I can now because I've got a digital one, but we'll go into that some other time. But I just wanted to learn how to play like a combo, keyboards, guitar, bass, drums. So I went to Brazil, and I found out when I got off the aeroplane, I thought the engines were still running, and I was walking into the heat of the engines until I realized it was that hot, and it's that hot all the time. And so I was there for 6 months, and I sort of got into a Latin American phase. I was just sort of into all things Latin, I suppose. My shirt partly represents that to this day, but I went to the Central America, Panama, spent some time there, blah, blah. So it's I just spent a lot of time in about a year altogether when you add it all up. But very hot, very humid, blah, but fantastic place, obviously. Fantastic food.
But it is. Let's talk about the guitars behind you. What kind of guitars have you got?
I'm so glad you asked me that. I've got I've just been doing, because more time, I suppose, I've been able to get into the whole thing. But the one on the left there is a Epiphone Casino, and that is the guitar that John Lennon, amongst others, but principally John Lennon played. And if you remember the gig on top of the Apple building when they were playing Get Back,
all right,
that was the guitar he was playing. Not that guitar, I mean, the Epiphone Casino. Sort of, I've found out some stuff about it, but that was really the rock and roll guitar in England at the time, because Chuck Berry played a Gibson 350, and they were too acoustic-y. Eventually became the Gibson 335, but that was the Epiphone was the equivalent rock and roll guitar. Then what you got then after that was you got the Fender Strat.
Yeah.
And this is an American standard. So this is not Mexican, this is not Japanese, this is the original American standard, the sort that Hendrix played. Or again, they all played around with the guitars. I mean, but this is the basic American standard guitar, Fender Strat, that was rock music. So the Casino kind of it's semi-hollow. So the sort of semi-hollow guitar turned into the Fender Strat, and then the Fender Strat turned into the black one there, which is actually an ESP LTD, and they've got active pickups, which is your heavy rock.
Right.
So I've sort of got the three phases of modern guitar music, I suppose you could say, which is your semi-hollow rock and roll guitar, your Fender Strat, which is your rock guitar, and your the thing about the LTD, it's got active pickups. That means the pickups are powered by a battery.
Right.
And so you get this fantastic sustain.
Okay.
And this super heavy rock sound. So with your Epiphone, that's just got what they call passive pickups, and they just pick up the normal sound of the guitar. So it's a much quieter sound, if you like, for want of a better word. But so those are the three guitars. Plus, I've got a 6-string acoustic and a 12-string acoustic, which just about covers it. Although I will say this, and I suppose buying a Gibson 335 is better than putting money in the bank, I should say, because I think I'll get one just for an investment anyway, because guitars are really going up in price if you get the right ones. And
how much is a Gibson now then?
Well, a Gibson ES335, which is the cherry red one, is the one you usually see. They're around £2,000, and even in the last few months when I've been looking, they've been going up in price. So you're going to look about 2,500. But over 5-10 years, it'll be worth more than I'd say 4,000 probably in 10 years, 5-10 years, which is more than if you put the money in the bank.
Yeah.
Good investment.
Yeah. Can you play any other musical instruments then?
Well, to be honest with you, I really play piano.
Right.
I have a beautiful Bluesner grand piano in the other room, but it's where my mother's sleeping at the minute. my 102-year-old mother, I should say. She's 100. She's 102. I look after her. But I originally, I'm a keyboard player. It's that's what really got me started playing piano. Conventional music lessons, and but the guitar this is 67, so guitars became so trendy. It was the time of the Fender Strat really and Jimi Hendrix, and I thought, well, I've got to have one of those anyway, haven't I? So I just learned to play guitar and make funny noises and all the rest of it. So it was guitar. I got to guitar second, but piano is my first instrument.
Right. Who taught you piano?
Well, I don't come from a musical family, but it was just the middle class thing to do, wasn't it? You sent your kids for piano lessons, and I dutifully went along to my piano lessons. Actually, I am an arty person. I'm genuinely a sort of showbiz type. I think if you put it like that, I'm creative, and I used to write poetry, and so I suddenly realised that if you wrote songs, if you played the piano, you could. Poetry became lyrics. So that was really the kind of kid I was. But it took a long time to learn how to do all that stuff. But that's just how it was particularly 67 to 73, 4, 5. That period was extremely creative in music in a way that it just isn't now. It's been in other times has been very musically creative, but it was that particular period I think was very, very, very creative in all sorts of ways, and it just made me want to do all those different kind of things, see if I could do them.
Yeah. What was your first song on a guitar then? What was the first song that you ever played on the guitar?
Purple Haze, I should think, by Jimi Hendrix. Something like that, yeah. Because it was just so weird. Because I said it because I was about 12 at the time, and I mean, I listened to a lot of. I mean, I'd say we weren't a musical family. What I mean is, nobody was a professional musician in the family. My grandmother was extremely musical in the sense of she loved music. She had a blues and a grand piano. I learned to play on her piano as well as the one at home. I mean, there was that music was there, but it was the whole creative thing. It was just so fantastic at that time.
Yeah. So, how much do you love music? And do you love music a lot?
Do I?
Do you love music a lot? Then do you?
Music, do I love it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was about 15 or 16 when I started writing serious songs on the guitar. But I have music running in my head all the time. I've come to see it as a right side, left side. So I've always got a tune running in my left hand side of my brain, and on the right hand side, I just have like academic-y, businessy, bureaucratic, all the stuff you have to read and all that kind of stuff just to get through life. But I always have melodies running through my mind, a bit like Bach, if you know, anybody knows, the kind of music Bach did, and it just runs until you suddenly think, hello, that's a combination I've never heard before, and so you've got a new melody. So I guess that's how it works for me. And I spoke the first song I actually wrote was on the piano, which was Kings and Queens, which is I've actually done a remake of it for Blues Man. So it's the album that's nearly finished. But that was for 17. But the thing was that I found writing ballads very easy. What was difficult was writing R&B records, and I think Crosstown Traffic by Hendrix was one that really impressed me. Not exclusively Hendrix, but that was one that made me think. And it was learning how to make R&B records that was the interesting thing for me. And of course that it's all about, like James Brown, for example. What makes James Brown sound like James Brown? And the answer is the beat.
Yeah. What's the best song you ever wrote?
The best song I ever wrote, I think it's probably Electricity in the early 80s, was probably the one that people know most. But I think my newest single, what is 2015 now, is Hole in My Heart. I think that's a pretty good song. I like that. Yeah. But I tend to like every song that I write when I write it.
Yeah. And where'd you get the ideas for your songs?
Say?
Where'd you get all the ideas to, for the songs?
Well, as I say, I always have a melody running through my mind. I'm just finishing one song. I'm in the middle of producing another song. I've got two songs in pre-production, and I've just written another song. So it's not an act, it actively happens all the time. It's not something that stops. It just happens. And I noticed with Barry Gibb that he said he wakes up in the morning, because I think, whatever anybody thinks about Barry Gibb, he's written some great songs. And apparently he just wakes up in the morning and he's got it, and he has to have a tape recorder, one of the old-fashioned cassette recorders there. With me, it's just a melody goes, I don't even know it's happening sometimes. It's just going round and round in my mind. And then I go to the piano and I play the first thing. And in fact, I put it on my Facebook page, actually, for those that want to see. If you look down a bit, I just got this tune and it comes to me on the spot. But it's always going round and round and round and round and round in my mind. And sometimes I'm just not aware of it. It just goes on. And if I focus on it, I can go, da, 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 da. But if I stop focusing on it, I can just talk instead. It's just always there. And suddenly I think unconsciously, what was that? That was something different. Because you think everybody had written every melody in the universe by now, wouldn't you, really? We've had the Western harmonic system since, well, it was certainly 1600, if you want. So that's 400 and something years. You think every melody had been written, and it hasn't. It's incredible. It's just an amazing system. You've just got to find that variation of notes, and you come up with another melody. It's just, it's a miracle of being human, actually. Yeah. I think. But not everybody can do it.
What were your grandparents like then? Were they musical?
Well, My grandfather and my grandmother were extremely exceptional people. I mean, people say that about, I know they do, and I know that's the case, but they were fantastical people. And my grandfather invented the light dimmer.
Oh,
He invented what we now call the light dimmer. And he invented several, he was an inventor, so he was an extremely creative person, but he was an extremely almost shy person in some respects. But my grandmother was this fantastically gregarious Victorian lady who absolutely loved music and the arts, music in particular. So on the one hand, I had this scientist teaching me everything he knew about science and philosophy. And I had this grandmother who was just, I think she was whispering Shakespeare into my ear the day I was born, you know. So I had a very Shakespearean historical upbringing, and a very philosophical and scientific one with music stuck in it. And it was really my grandparents. Obviously, my mum played her part, but no one could compare to my grandparents. Everyone loved them, and they had this fantastic influence on me. Um, from day one. So I owe everything to them, really, to be honest.
what did you think about the Beatles?
Oh, I loved them. I didn't quite get into them in the first phase, but when it got into the more psychedelic stuff, then I suddenly there was. I think my favourite was a magical mystery tour with Blue Jay Way on, and all that stuff. Was it? But I can't remember off the top of my head. But yes, I am because I got the record right here. And it's just got such great songs. I think that was the one. Magical Mystery Tour, Fall on the Hill, Blue Jay Way. Yeah, your mother should know. I Am the Walrus, and Strawberry Fields and all that. I mean, I love psychedelia. I do love, not because I take psychedelic drugs. I love the whole thing about it. And so that really struck me. And at the same time, I was really struck by Jimi Hendrix's guitar playing, who I thought must be the greatest guitarist player ever. People obviously thought I was crazy. Guess what? He's the
You are.
greatest. Yeah, we know that. But crazy people are very often right. This is the trouble. And he was the most, so, it was a strange mixture of things at that time. It was 1967, 1968. You got the Beatles playing all these great songs. You got Jimi Hendrix playing this amazing guitar. And I mean, you actually saw the end of the war as well, which I think that what we're seeing a problem at the moment is a bit of authoritarianism coming back. So you've got this real break from authoritarianism and creativity and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's how it was.
What do you think about music today? Because a long time ago, music was like 60s, 70s, 80s. That's what I like. You know, what do you think about music today where like it's all this kind of like banging stuff? And what do you think about that?
I genuinely don't think anything of it. In fact, I mean, I've used Spotify for free for a while, and I have joined now. And they gave me an up to date. You get these lists of bands, right? And I think the only one I really knew was Dua Lipa, and I have to say that those couple of Don't Start Now and that other one are good records. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all. But the rest of them, I just didn't know who they were. And then I went to a 1970s list, and I knew who everybody was. So, either I'm just living in the past, or I thought it was a very creative period. And I think it was a very creative period. I think it was fantastic. I think it was very unusual musical phase. You went from all sorts of things, you went from hip rock to free and sort of heavy rocks to Black Sabbath, and then suddenly you were into disco. You were really moving the goalposts all the time, and it was really interesting. But now it's just some form of digital R&B. It's okay. I don't hate it or anything, but it's not wildly creative.
Now,
But there's
what do you think about Culture Club?
who? Which one?
Culture Club.
Culture Club. I was actually there at the time, to be honest with you, and I appreciate their success. I mean, you know, you can remember the songs Karma Chameleon, What Was I, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? But they weren't a great playing band. You know, they were. Sorry?
What they good?
They weren't great musicians, no, no,
No.
no. And I mean, I think that makes a difference to me. I mean, I can remember the songs, and I think that's great, but they weren't a great playing band.
All right. Okay.
I mean,
What do you
Steely
think of?
Dan is a
Sorry.
Steely Dan is a great playing band.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know who Steely Dan is, you know,
Yeah.
if one knows, yeah. But you know, that's what the difference. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on a bit. Let's look at the. What do you think about the funky groovy music then?
Well, how it really started for me was that I was really playing Black Sabbath, and I mean, obviously I'd heard of Hendrix and the Beatles, but most people liked Black Sabbath and Deep Purple kind of stuff at that stage. You're talking Free, if you remember, All Right Now, and all that. It was very rocky. And the first professional gig I got was in '73, and we went to play on the American bases in Germany. And because they're American, they like soul and R&B.
All
So
right.
we had to rehearse up all this stuff, you know, knock on wood and all that jazz. I mean, all of it, you know. And when I got there, you know, there were, remember, this was the time of the Vietnam War, and there was conscripted. So there were all these musicians who were conscripts, and so we were playing away, and they were just kind of laughing because here was this 18-year-old white kid from, you know, the suburbs trying to play, you know, knock on wood as if it meant, you know, and they were just laughing their heads off. And I found out they taught me about syncopation.
All right.
And if you don't know what syncopation is, it's when you play 1/16 of a beat in front of the beat. So it's jigga jig jack jigga jigga jack jigga jigga jig jack jigga jigga jack jigga jig all this kind of stuff. And that's what makes soul sound soul. It's slightly different with James Brown, but we won't get into that. So they taught me how to play funky music.
Right. Okay.
And so that suddenly made me quite valuable because there were loads of gigs in those days and you got paid good money. I mean, make no mistake, I was getting 40 quid a night on, often, not always, but most of the time. That kind of money, 20, 30, 40, when £10 a week was the average amount. And so there was real money. So it was actually a money earner because I could actually play black funky music in England. And the average white band had only just started and they'd gone to America. So it actually was very, very helpful. And it was funky and it was groovy, groovy. So it was just about playing funky music that has what they call a backbeat. And but I mean, I got signed to RCA, but level 42 were in front of me.
Yeah.
And they got the from Mike Vernon. I mean, great producer. I mean, you know, there you go. But that's the machinery of the music business, and you can't get caught up. I write music because I like writing music, not because of the music business, you know. So I just write songs because I write them, you know.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you one question.
Mm.
It's about BBC Top of the Pops. Did you say one time that the old, BBC Top of the Pops was corrupt?
Oh, I mean, the whole thing was totally corrupt. I mean, I'm sorry to say it. It doesn't bring me any pleasure to say so. But the whole thing was totally corrupt in the sense that it wasn't based on merit or anything like that. That basically, I think it was Don Arden. It was some Sharon Osbourne's father who was behind a lot of it. And it basically cost £12,000 at the time to get in on the whole thing. Well, if you think £12,000 in those days would have bought you a big house in London. So you're talking about £1 million, probably. So it's about that. So just get yourself on. And I was the one that discovered the paedophile ring in Top of the Pops. And I discovered Chris Denning, and he was arrested. I don't think it did my career any good, but there was a huge paedophile ring. Yeah. I mean, it ran through the whole thing. And the way you got on was that you didn't say anything about it. And that's been, and I think it damaged my musical career. Genesis and 10cc must have known about it. If I knew about it, I was 18, 19, and I worked it out that Chris Denning was not doing the right thing. So it was, and none of the charts were really real. You know, you just, I mean, there's that famous film with that guy telling Jimi Hendrix that he could just buy his records in, which is what they did. So so a lot of the stars that we know as stars today only became stars because of that system. But on the other hand, a lot, you know, some of them succeeded and a lot of them failed because some of them were good.
Right.
So Eric Clapton, obviously.
Yeah. So the BBC then, did you actually tell them they are corrupt?
I repeatedly told them that this was going on. I told them my MP at the time, 1986. I told them because I'd hired somebody to do some plugging at Radio One with the record I was making, and it was obvious that they were just bribing each other. I mean, it was absolutely obvious that that's what was going on, and you know, I'm not.
There was some talk of that. They said that you might have been jealous. Is that right?
Me jealous?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
We're not a jealous family, actually. My mother and my grandparents were not jealous about anything because we got nothing to be jealous of, to be frank. You
Right.
know, I've got everything I need, and I'm not looking for a job, and I never have done. I'm only interested in situations which are honest and straightforward and good fun.
Yeah.
And lots of people go into the music business for completely the wrong reasons, including getting their hands on young people underage. You know, that's an obvious place that you find them. Obviously, there is a money aspect to it, but things have moved on. But the Top of the Pops has quite rightly gone. I'm sorry, but it had to go. And it's all about festivals now. That's really where, if you want to get into straight pop music, you go on the cruise ships, and if you want to be a rock person, you get onto the festivals somehow.
So the trouble you said about the Pops was corrupt. Do you think festivals can be the same?
Well, of course, everything can be the same. This is the trouble. I mean, I'm enmeshed in a similar kind of corruption thing at the moment. It's part of what I'm about because I'm a I manage my own business, and things turn up on you in trade, don't they?
Yeah.
And so, but large organisations, in fact, you know, I don't think it's anything to do with the police. I think it's to do with the management of the police. But so I'm not referring to the police for other than it's an organisation. But the chief constable, I think he was, of Manchester Police, said that all large organisations have problems, and in fact, in management theory, it's known that any organisation that becomes large starts to become corrupt. We saw it with the diesel thing with VW.
Yeah.
It's everybody. They've got all the emails now. All the management knew what was going on. They all knew. But they didn't want to lose their jobs, so they kept quiet.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. So, you know, it could happen. I mean, there must be loads of young people that get into festivals. I know friends of mine that let their 15-year-old girls go to with other people, not alone. So, you know, you can never know. It's perfectly possible. But Top of the Pops, obviously, because you could get on the telly, and if you could get a record in the charts, then you just got tons of gigs all over the country. You know, we can all remember the early 70s with, you know, all the glam rock crowd, you know, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's the same idea. You just stumped up some money, you got onto Top of the Pops, and you just kept quiet about anything that you saw going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, what I want to talk about was, were there any like big, money operations going on between you and other people?
Well, I suppose the nearest thing we got to it was with RCA, and then when obviously level 42 seemed to have all the attention, I moved to Red Bus. And but the problem is when if you get into the big money things, you basically sell all your rights. And you know, you probably end up with 2%, 3%, 4% on records that now aren't even selling very much. You know, they don't sell for much money. So, you know, it's you give up everything. What do you get in return? Well, I couldn't tour because I'm attached to where I live because of my family. You can't go touring. Anybody knows anything about touring, you've really got to have a well-organized person at home to run your home for you. If you haven't, it's catastrophic. So I just couldn't. So in the end, you end up selling everything so that they will fund your touring to start with. So in the end, if you read, because nowadays we've had a lot more documentaries about bands and everything that happened, and very often didn't get any money at all and all that. So when it all got too big, it made me nervous, and I just thought I'm quite happy playing pubs and clubs, you know.
Yeah. What was it like to work with Tony Arnold?
Well, it was a revelation, really, and of course, Tony has gone on to do wondrous things, you know. But he just taught me so much about recording in itself. I mean, because basically, I mean, I'd had tape recorders in the 60s because they were all the thing, and you'd listen to albums on tape, you know. But then I wanted to learn how to record, and actually, I started off in Regent Sound in London, where a lot of famous players were. And I went to 20th Century Fox. This was 1973, 74. I went to all these big studios, and they just couldn't get the sound right. And that's when I discovered you've got to go into the studio with an excellent production engineer. And just by pure chance, maybe I was just looking, I went round to Tony Arnold's studio. There was the production engineer. And that was when the Hitmen came forward. We recorded the album famously. And Tony just taught me about recording.
Brilliant. Well done. Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hello?
Yeah?
Oh, just lost you there.
Yeah. Technology isn't perfect yet.
Yeah, nothing. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That was a good insight in somebody's music career, you know, because Robert's, you know, I can talk more about what Robert's into, and we don't usually have the time. But the trouble is, whatever you do in the music game, I'm talking to the listeners now. Be careful what you're doing. You know, if you approach a studio, make sure they're the right studio for you, and so on. Because at the end of the day, sometimes even agents can basically, I'm not supposed to say this, but you got to be careful, and they can really rip you off. So be careful what you do. And someone said to me on the radio just now, they said left me a message. They say, "Hi, Steve. If I want to get into the music game, how do I do it?" Well, you know, I it's really hard these days to get in the music. I don't. Do you think so, Rob?
It's harder than it was, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
particularly there used to be loads and loads of gigs just everywhere. If you could just get 4 nights a week, just all over the south of England, God knows where, there were just loads of clubs, and it just doesn't happen now. You've got to kind of get on the cruises or on the festivals. That's the problem with it. It's not just, when I started, it was just a bunch of us, and there were so many gigs, we just fell into them and started earning money. It's not like that now.
No.
And also, you've got to go on these courses, and Brits course.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot into it. It's a lot into it. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I've got to go, but in the meantime, don't forget. I think it's around about 10 o'clock tonight. It's the rock and roll sound on the radio. Then 12 o'clock, it's the love song. So until later on, thank you very much for joining us. Rob, if you stay there, I'll talk to you.